Bernie Madoff's story is one of the darkest chapters in American financial history. It is a story of trust betrayed, of lives destroyed, and of a man who built an empire of lies so vast that it shook Wall Street and shattered the faith of countless families, charities, and even entire communities. At the heart of this tragedy was not just money. It was the belief people had in Madoff, the faith that their savings, their retirements, their children's futures were safe in his hands. And when the truth came out, that faith collapsed like a house of cards. Madoff was not an ordinary fraudster. He was a respected name in finance, a man who had once served as chairman of NASDAQ, one of the largest stock exchanges in the world. To many, Bernie Madoff symbolized success, stability, and expertise. He dressed like a gentleman, spoke with confidence, and moved in circles of influence. Wealthy individuals, powerful hedge funds, charitable organizations, and even universities trusted him with billions of dollars. But behind this polished image was a scheme that would later be revealed as the largest Ponzi scheme in history, one estimated at nearly $65 billion. To understand how Madoff pulled this off, you need to understand what a Ponzi scheme really is. It's simple in concept, but devastating in practice. In a Ponzi scheme, early investors are paid returns not from actual profits, but from money put in by newer investors. It creates an illusion of success. As long as new money keeps flowing in, the fraud looks legitimate. But the moment that flow slows down, the entire scheme begins to collapse. This was the game Madoff played for decades, but on a scale the world had never seen. Madoff's pitch was always too good to ignore. He promised steady returns, often around 10 to 12% a year, no matter the state of the market. When the stock market went up, his clients made money. When the market went down, his clients still made money. To outsiders, it looked like he had cracked the code of Wall Street, like he had found a secret formula to beat the system. People were not just investing with Madoff, they were begging to invest with him. Many even saw his fund as so exclusive that being allowed in was like joining a private club for the financial elite. But it wasn't just the wealthy who trusted him. Charities handed over their funds, hoping to grow donations that supported hospitals, schools, and humanitarian causes. Pensioners put their life savings into his hands. Families invested the money they had worked decades to earn, believing they were securing their children's futures. For many, Bernie Madoff was not just a money manager. He was a lifeline, a guardian of dreams. And that is what makes his betrayal so cruel. He wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing hope, dignity, and security. What is perhaps most shocking is how long he was able to keep this fraud alive. There were warning signs as early as the 1990s. Financial experts questioned how he could consistently deliver such stable returns when no one else could. Harry Markopolos, a financial analyst, famously raised alarms and even wrote to the SEC multiple times, saying that Madoff's numbers simply didn't add up. He called it the world's largest Ponzi scheme, years before it was exposed. But regulators failed to act. They ignored the warnings, brushed aside the suspicions, and allowed Madoff to continue. That failure of oversight would later come under intense scrutiny, as thousands of lives were left in ruins. The collapse of Madoff's empire came in 2008, during the global financial crisis. As markets crashed and fear spread, investors began pulling out their money. Madoff, who had for decades relied on new investments to pay off old ones, suddenly couldn't keep up. There wasn't enough new money coming in, and the scheme began to unravel. In December of that year, Madoff confessed to his sons that the entire business was one big lie. His sons, unable to live with the truth, turned him in to authorities. Within days, Bernie Madoff was arrested, and the scale of his fraud began to surface. The numbers were staggering. Around 37,000 people across 136 countries were victims. The total losses were estimated at $65 billion on paper, though the actual cash invested was closer to $17 billion. Some wealthy investors lost fortunes, but the most devastating impact was on ordinary people who had trusted Madoff with their entire life savings. Retirees who had thought they would live comfortably in their later years found themselves penniless. Small charities had to shut their doors. Families were broken apart by stress and despair. Suicides were reported, including that of French financier René-Thierry Magon de la Villouche, who had invested heavily with Madoff and felt the weight of the losses. Even within Madoff's own family, the damage was unbearable. His son Mark took his own life on the second anniversary of his father's arrest. In 2009, Bernie Madoff stood before a federal judge and pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He admitted that he had run the largest Ponzi scheme in history and that it had gone on for decades. The judge sentenced him to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible, calling his crimes extraordinarily evil. For many victims, the sentence was a hollow victory. Justice was served on paper, but the money, the dreams, and the trust that were lost could never truly be replaced. Yet even after his arrest, the fallout continued. Investigations revealed that banks, feeder funds, and even family members may have ignored red flags or failed to ask tough questions. Billions of dollars were recovered through lawsuits and settlements, and trustees worked tirelessly to return some of that money to victims. As of recent years, more than $14 billion have been recovered and redistributed, but for many victims, it was too little, too late. The emotional scars of betrayal were far deeper than the financial wounds. The story of Bernie Madoff is not just about one man's greed. It is about the fragility of trust in a world driven by money. It is about the dangers of blind faith in figures of authority. It is about how even the most intelligent investors, the most respected charities, and the most experienced institutions can fall victim to deception when they are blinded by promises that seem too good to be true. Above all, it is about human lives, about the retiree who had to sell their home, the small charity that had to close its doors, the family who lost not just their savings, but their faith in people. Bernie Madoff died in prison in 2021 at the age of 82. He left behind a legacy of pain, anger, and unanswered questions. His name has become synonymous with betrayal and greed, a warning etched into the history of Wall Street. But his story also serves as a lesson. It reminds us that transparency, accountability, and skepticism are essential in finance, and that when something looks too good to be true, it often is. Even today, when we hear the name Bernie Madoff, it is not just about money. It is about the shattered lives, the broken promises, and the haunting reminder that one man's lies can destroy the futures of thousands. His $65 billion Ponzi scheme will forever remain one of the greatest tragedies of financial history and a chilling symbol of how far greed can go when left unchecked.